Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey.
It's a different time out there, kids, depending on when you listen to this. As we record this, it is 2024, the month of May, and it's a different world out there. I don't care how old you are. Go back 5-6 years. That's maybe about right. Different world then, actually, than it is now. Some people are okay with it. Lots of people complain about it all the time. And Phil and I were discussing some of this before we started here today. The world's changed, man. And we're not here to dive too deep into social commentary, but, based on what we're talking about here today, because some people take this stuff so insanely seriously, it's probably going to come up. But again, it's a different world out there, I promise you. Depending on where you come down on this stuff at, depending on your feelings and your thoughts, your own personal experience, maybe you're okay with how sensitive things are now. Maybe you're sick of it. You notice I haven't used the word woke one time. There's good reason for that, because it's overplayed. It's a word that needs to be retired. Shelve the word, kids. My goodness. Let's move on with our lives here. How about we just be better to each other and better all the way around as a society, right? But again, it's a different world. Either you're into it or you're not into it. And based on, again, what we're going to talk about here today, we'll see what you guys think. Because we're talking about Blazing Saddles. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tom, it's a comedy. All that for this? Yes. Do you want to know why? Because I've spent most of my adult life, most of it, hearing, can't make that now. You couldn't make that now. You couldn't do that now. I can't wait to get into that. Because I got opinions and thoughts, and I can't wait to get into this film because it is an all-time classic. I defy anyone to disagree with that. You're entitled to your opinion. Or for anyone to tell me this isn't a comedy classic. I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's get into this, shall we? Blazing Saddles is a 1974 American satirical post-modernist Western black comedy film. That's a mouthful. And yes, she turns 50 years old this year. Can you believe that? My God in heaven. Directed by Mel Brooks, who co-wrote the screenplay with Andrew Bergman, the great Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Unger. Based on a story treatment by Bergman. The film stars a variety of actors, an ensemble cast, some true greats in this film. Can't wait to get into it. Yes, controversial, 100%, crude, you better believe it. Is it the lowest common denominator comedy? You be the judge. Is it lowbrow? Is it too lowbrow for you? Again, I say, you be the judge. Release date, as we said, 1974, more specifically, February 7th. Running time, 93 minutes. The budget for this film is $2.6 million. It may have made some money. The box office was $119.6 million. It's hard not to laugh at that. My God in heaven. And that is your lowdown for Blazing Saddles. So, Phil, did I get too dramatic at the intro here? How often have you heard, you couldn't do this now? I mean, first off, what do you think about that? And second, what do you think overall about Blazing Saddles?
Yeah, I hear a lot of, the commentary of, the movies you can't make now and how people are too sensitive, blah, blah, blah. And how, back in this time period, everybody knew it was a joke and you could just take a joke and move on. I do think times have changed, but I think the most annoying thing about that conversation is that um, there's a difference between the times changing and that there's one dominant voice in the room. Um, when the times change and there's multiple voices in the room and somebody's saying, "Hey, I get jokes. I love comedy as much as the next person." Um, but sometimes it's more to it than just a joke, and this is offensive to me. Even if you don't personally understand why something is offensive, if I'm telling you this bothers me,
Mm.
it's okay to just accept that. I don't know why there's such a novel approach to these things, but here we are. And man, the woke conversation is a there's a rant that I will try not to get into on here, but it is a word that I feel a lot of people in politics, particularly the white people, have misused from
Mm.
the very beginning. Um, Woke was never supposed to mean socially conscious. And every time I hear certain people use it, I always ask immediately, do you know where that term originated from or why black people started using it?
You and I have discussed this before, but tell me, because it's been a while since you and I have talked about this.
Yeah. Being stay woke, that just meant stay aware, stay vigilant because um just keep your wits about you. That's what it meant. It
Mm.
had nothing to do with what people have co-opted it and transformed it into.
Yeah, because now it's, I'm awake. My eyes have opened. I self awareness. Yeah, it morphed. It totally morphed. I can almost understand why it did that or why it was taken to that degree. But dude, like you said, it's gone way too overboard here, man.
Yeah, and I if that happened naturally within black culture, that's one thing. But the way that people use it in politics is very annoying and insulting. Um, and I don't know. Every time I think about it, I'm just like, you're not even using this term correctly. This was never the intended use for it. Um, and that says everything about that crowd's beliefs in certain things. They don't know what they're actually criticizing because they don't take the time to actually listen,
Mm.
and that was partially my beef with this. Hey man, we should be able to say what we want, freedom of speech. Yes, you can say whatever you want, but I am allowed to say, hey, that bothers me and this is why. If you
Right.
don't want to listen to me explain why this bothers me and just explains that you should be able to say whatever you want, then you're a jerk.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's why I led with what I led with, Phil, today on this movie, because this idea that we couldn't make this today is utter nonsense, Phil. It's
Yes.
free country. You can make whatever you want. You just have to be prepared. There could be some people who push back. I mean, to suggest we couldn't do this, dude, they said the N word in Django Unchained 110 times.
Django is in a lot of ways very much inspired by this movie as well.
Yeah.
You can make certain movies. Um, it's just it's nothing wrong with having some tact sometimes.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, considering this movie's older than you are. All right. So, without knowing how the best way to ask this question, have you been insulted personally by this? Did you know upon seeing for the first time, oh, it's a comedy. I get it. The white people are morons, and the only smart people in the film are the black people in the film. Like, did you see that, or did you immediately go, "Whoa, what is this crap I'm watching?"
Well, I think it made a lot of stuff in the movie more palatable because it immediately lets you know what it is from the onset of the movie. I mean,
Mm.
even the credits from the very beginning, it feels like uh, one of those old Bugs Bunny shorts.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, the music and everything, it sounds like old Looney Tunes. And so I think you're immediately supposed to know that this is satire.
100% satire. Phil, what? I'm not speaking because on terms of any race in particular here. why can't people separate? And I've talked about this a lot for the pro wrestling crowd too, right? Like, if it's not for you, turn it. Don't watch it. Like, why is it so hard for some people to do that, man?
I think the internet has given you a space to voice opinions, and that has come with its pros and cons, of course. There are great things about being able to hear a variety of opinions. But I think this generation, the internet has made certain people feel like not just I'm entitled to certain things, but that I can control certain things. Because we've seen things like internet campaigns of, hey, take this down or change this, or petitions working.
Mm.
And so when those things has worked, it's given the internet crowd uh this undue sense of power that, hey, we can change these things that we don't like. It's not just that I don't want to watch it. I can get on the internet and say that it shouldn't even exist. And I just think that's the wrong approach, the completely wrong approach.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's we've covered, we've talked about reboots here and sequels and prequels and all this other stuff. Like, and again, my gut instinct is to always say, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Well, this movie offends me. Well, don't watch it. Like, unless the movie, and look, Phil, let's be honest, let's be adults here. Unless a movie's doing something inherently evil, like advocating for violence or advocating for something against a child. I mean, I'm not talking about snuff films here, for God's sake. I'm talking about if it's a Hollywood production and you don't like it, that you just don't have. I don't get it. I don't get it. Some people taking up crusades, whether it's for a race or for a belief system or whatever. I get it. You're offended, but dude, that's art. Isn't that part of the price we pay for being an open society where we can express ourselves, Phil? That's part of the package deal, isn't it?
Yes. But that's why it's a total difference from getting on the internet and expressing your feelings about something, your interpretation of something, and how something made you feel. Um, that's totally fine. But when it turns into, all right, well, it shouldn't exist, and let's just completely get rid of it altogether. I don't agree with that, because I mean
Hmm.
you can voice your feelings of being offended by something till the cows come home, but that doesn't mean that you then have the right to say, all right, then completely scratch this thing altogether. We don't need it. You've decided that you don't need it.
Yeah, yeah. And dude, not for nothing, Phil, but we assume that the state of the world at this point is not going to last forever. The state of the world in 1974 didn't last forever. Things are going to evolve. I mean, hopefully they don't de-evolve, right? But like, in 5 years, maybe it won't be this intense. Maybe it'll be worse. Maybe it'll be better. But if you take away things that you had nothing to do with their creation and they didn't put food on your table, I'm talking about a film, whether it's a film, an album, or a TV show, or a book, right? Let's burn books. It's a great idea. Like, eventually this stuff may come back and like you've destroyed it. You said we couldn't have it anymore, and because of you, now we don't have it. No one's thinking long term here at all, are they, Phil? They're just thinking short term, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that are in the moment of, this is what I want and this is how I feel in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, Blazing Saddles. Let me tell you, kids, something. If there has ever been a comedy classic, this is one. This movie, satire is 100% the right way to put it, as Phil said earlier. This movie makes a lot of statements about how dumb racism is. It's just, we're not going to be able to stamp it out today under the boot of the 6M podcast. I totally get it. But it continues to be one of the dumbest things I've ever encountered or ever been near or ever read, seen, or heard is racist. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. How people are, I don't know. But this movie kicks a lot of that straight in the face, as well it should. This is nothing but slapstick comedy at its finest. And as you said, it's a Warner Brothers cartoon. It's Bugs Bunny. I mean, these characters aren't real. None of this is real. I mean, even the racism in it is laughed at as it should be and not taken. Yeah, I don't want to say not taken seriously. but the people instigating it, they get their comeuppance in the end, which is important. And they're never really a threat to anybody, Phil. They're all bumbling buffoons. I mean, I submit that this movie doesn't work at all and would never talk about it again had this cast not clicked together, had the right people not been where they were, and of course, if Mel Brooks had not been the man behind it. Phil, how important do you think it is that Mel Brooks wasn't just some random white guy, not Jewish, no cultural or ethnic background to speak of at all? I mean, does this movie even get made at that point? Is that a weird question? Do you see where I'm coming from on that?
No, I think it's a fair question. I think having somebody like Mel Brooks that understands that the story and the style of comedy comes first, and it's not just trying to do these things for the sake of doing something shocking, throwing some slurs around, and you know, shocking people or affirming people's beliefs. It's the story you want to tell. It's the comedy that affirms, like you said, that no, the emotion behind racism is dumb.
Mhm.
Like it's when you really think about it, it's stupid. Um, and I think kind of pulling the wool off of that and showing people that is kind of the point of this. So it's not just him being smart enough to make that kind of movie, but allowing people that are different voices in the room with him uh, to steer him in the right direction as well.
Yeah, and chief among them, Richard Pryor, who's not in the film, but I think that's maybe where we should begin our conversation here today about this cast is that Richard Pryor's hands are all over this, and you can completely see them. If you didn't know that he was part of the writing team on this, and then you were told later, go, oh, it makes sense because it's absolutely Richard's sense of humor through a lot of this film. We know that he was going to be Sheriff Bart, but Phil, he was so knee deep in his addiction he couldn't pull himself together. I mean, what do you think about Pryor's contributions here, his effect on this, and how do you think it would have been seeing him as Sheriff Bart if things had been different for him personally?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this movie, like you said, it has all of the Richard Pryor touches on it. Um, the main two characters, as many movies and other things that uh, Richard and Gene Wilder have done together, you can immediately see it. Like, yeah, this was supposed to be his role.
Mm. Oh, so good. Gene Wilder is quoted as saying about this film, "They've smashed racism in the face, but they're doing it while you laugh." So yeah, well said. Yeah, this was absolutely supposed to be Pryor, and by the way, Richard Pryor came up with the character of Mongo, so that's pretty cool. He, I hate that things didn't work out. Cleavon Little, who we'll get to in a minute, freaking amazing. He did so well in this film, but man, I don't think there's any doubt that Richard Pryor would have absolutely crushed this. But I remember seeing an interview with Mel where he's like, I just couldn't put him in it. He's like, he was just, the studio was scared. And supposedly, Gene Wilder had said in an interview in 2013 that the casting change was a result of Pryor contacting Brooks via telephone during production and informing Brooks that he was in Cleveland and didn't know why.
Oh wow!
Scary, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, man. It's amazing the drugs didn't get him, dude. Amazing to me. Yeah, he was one of a kind, kids. Absolute classic. We don't talk enough about Richard Pryor on this show, but I promise you we're going to rectify that as well. So let's get into this cast. Cleavon Little as Sheriff Bart. To be able to play this straight faced cannot be the easiest thing in the world. And there's stories here of it not being the easiest thing in the world. But dude, I just don't know who else at the time. Maybe I'm missing somebody besides Pryor. I think Cleavon Little is perfect. What do you think about him as Sheriff Bart?
Yeah, I think he's perfect. I think to keep going with the Bugs Bunny reference, the way he stands, the way the way he kind of looks and winks at the camera at times, it's perfect.
Hmm.
Just small notes and things that he does, facial expressions, the way he delivers a line, it's just perfect. One of my favorite jokes in the entire movie is when they show up and they try to get in with the rest of that gang of villains, and they're dressed as the Ku Klux members, and when he found out and he pulled the hood off him, and he just looks around and he's go, eh. And now for my next impression, Jesse Owens, and just runs away.
That's really good. Like in all the henchmen and stuff, there's Nazis in the crowd, there's Arabs in the crowd, there's Mexican bikers with no motorcycles.
Just the handlebars.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what is this? So ridiculous. Is that chewing gum? I hope you brought some for everyone. I know there's going to be this many people here. Like, they're all so dumb.
Yeah.
It's freaking ridiculous. And the line that when Sheriff Bart, when the old lady says the very rude thing to him outside the jail, and he's sitting there facing the camera, and, you know, Gene Wilder's talking to him, and he's like, what did you expect? Come in and marry my daughter? Welcome to the town. You know, you got to remember, these are people of the land, common clave of the New West, you know, morons. That was improvised. So when Cleavon Little bust out laughing, that was the real deal. You could so tell it was improvised. So cool. So cool. Yeah, he's freaking great. By the way, he was almost called Tex X instead of Black
X. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. Of course, reference to Malcolm X, obviously. He and they also thought about the Purple Sage, but supposedly the writers thought that was not great titles. So he says that in terms of the titles Blazing Saddles, he was taking a shower and the words Blazing Saddles just suddenly popped to his head. When he got out of the shower, he pitched the title to his wife, the late Anne Bancroft, who liked the idea. That's how the movie ended up with the title. But again, you know, Black Bart could have been somebody else. So yeah. Hey kids, Tom Clark here, and did you know the very podcast you're listening to right now is available on boinkstudios.com. B-O-I-N-K, Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com. Again, I just think he's great here. And, you know, the studio had a problem with the N-word. Of course they did. They wanted him to change it. He didn't want to change anything, so he made no changes. He believed in the story. He knew it was funny. And I'm glad they stuck to their guns, no pun intended. We've mentioned Gene Wilder here. True comedy legend, Gene Wilder. Great actor. Doesn't get enough credit for how good of an actor he really was. And his comic timing, especially with Richard, was off the charts. I mean, as the Waco kid, dude, I can't envision anyone else playing this part. But he was one of a kind. What do you think about Gene in this film?
Yeah, multi-talented, very funny, like I said, very really good actor, and incredibly likable in almost everything you see him in. He just has a way of hooking you in, with doing very little to hook you in as well. When you just think of how many times you probably in your lifetime have watched Willy Wonka, and how he just does so many things in this movie that just I don't know, just hooks you into this character, and nobody has managed to capture this whimsicalness of the character since that he managed to do. Um, and I think it's the same way in this movie. He's so great in this movie. He does so many things. It's almost like watching a magician at work.
Ooh, it's true. Good call. Very versatile. I thought some of his best work was in Young Frankenstein. I love that film so much. Another Mel Brooks classic. Mel Brooks actually asked Johnny Carson to play the Waco kid.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting. And of course, he also offered it to John Wayne, which would have been a much different film. He sends the script to John Wayne, and as legend has it, as Mel Brooks has said, John reads it over the weekend and then calls him up, and he says, Mel, I can't do this film. And he's like, why? And he's like, because I'm John Wayne. Do you know what happened if I did this film? He said, but it's the hardest I've ever laughed at anything in my life. And he said, as soon as it comes out, I'll be the first guy in line to buy a ticket. So supposedly John Wayne turned him down.
Yeah, I think that would have been a interesting piece of satire. It would have made the satire even more biting if you had John Wayne uh, next to this black sheriff. It would have added some kind of level of legitimacy for a western. Yeah, it's kind of a different movie if John Wayne's in it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'm just throwing in tidbits here and there. Slim Pickens apparently offered to buy Cleavon Little a drink for every time he had to call him the N word in the movie. And as a joke, Cleavon Little had 3 extra pages slipped into Pickens' script package where it was in every line of dialogue he spoke. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, he's Gene Wilder's great in this film, man. I just don't. Again, I would love to have seen him in Pryor. I mean, we got them in Stir Crazy. We got them in what is it, Silver Streak, or I think was the film about the train. And then there was See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Great comedy duo, those two guys. Freaking amazing. Right off the bat, Phil, you have to nail the 2 main characters. And again, does this movie work if you don't nail Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid?
I don't think it does. Though getting the 2 main characters is so important. Um, you have to get those 2 right. And they have to be likable. They have to be um, who they are because again, to make the Bugs Bunny reference, the thing that makes Bugs Bunny is that he appears cooler and funnier and all of these like things that make you love this character more than the villains because you have to understand like if it's just the main thing about racism is all right, well this person is inferior to me by putting this person on a pedestal and go, hey man, this guy's great. Why do you hate him?
Yeah. It discounts the argument right away. Makes a lot of sense, actually. It disarms the racism, which I think is maybe should be the point, to take the power away from people.
Yes.
Yeah. By letting them know, you can't do this. Slim Pickens, as we mentioned, is Taggart. He is the henchman. Slim Pickens is one of those guys, man. He's been, God knows, his well, let's look it up. His work, television, film. He's in some of the most classic productions of all time. Guy had a massive career, great casting here. You're going to, put cowboy personalities, Western personalities in this film. He absolutely had to fit. And of course, he was the evil minion next to Harvey Korman as Hadley Lamar. That's Hadley Lamar. Comic genius as Harvey Korman. Dude, those two together. Talk about Bart and the Waco Kid. You also had to nail Harvey Korman and Slim Pickens, both so woefully ignorant and completely dumb. And if one of them's smarter than the bunch of them, it maybe is Corman, but not by much. He's still a jerk, like still a scumbag, but he's still kind of dumb at the same time. Harvey Korman is on his game here, man. Him and Slim Pickens both. What do you think about these two guys working together in this movie?
I think they're great. I think that I think the Headley character is great. The fact that he has this overinflated sense of superiority to everybody else, um, and he he ultimately creates this thing that ends up being his downfall. Is the funniest thing about the entire movie. He tries to like outsmart people by going, "Hey, I'll go and put this black guy as a sheriff. Everybody hates him, so it'll never work." And then not only does he end up being great at the job of being sheriff, but then you galvanize the town around him.
Yeah, completely backfired, right? Because they all started supporting him in the end.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can we say something about Cleavon Little's suit? This outfit, it matches the horse. Freaking great, man. I love it so much. Count Basie out in the desert with his orchestra. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I think that scene when he becomes sheriff and he comes out with his outfit and with the big like shiny badge and everything on it, very funny every time I see it, man. Because
So
it's such a
good.
black person thing to do. Like, oh well, I'm sheriff now. I'm in a position of power. I have to look good.
It looks great. It's Gucci too on the saddle. I think Gucci stitched on the saddle. So that's very cool. Yeah. He looks great, man. I gotta say, yeah, he's Harvey Korman. Kids, if you know anything about the Carol Burnett Show, you know about Harvey Korman and Tim Conway, another classic comedy duo, much like Pryor and Wilder. Just two guys who working together is just just freaking hilarious, man. Shout out to Tim Conway for sure. Like there was, and this is in front of me, so I'm going to say it. There was a Blazing Saddles sitcom spinoff which aired on TV in '75, which had a laugh track and starred Louis Gossett Jr. It was called Black Bart. It lasted one episode and can be viewed on YouTube. One episode, Phil.
Wow. Yeah, I love the idea of somebody turning this on and watching it once and just say, yeah, that's enough of that.
Well, you lose the spirit of it. I mean, he won. You could say, well, spoilers, but he leaves in the end. You could say, well, let's follow him on his adventures, but hasn't he already kind of won? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What are the adventures? Him fighting a different a different villain every week, and having like a message of the week to show people, hey, racism is bad. Well, you've already shown people that it's bad.
Right. Yeah. Now I got to go find that on the YouTube and check it out. I have to now. I never knew the freaking thing existed. Let's see. Madeline Kahn as Lily Von Stupp. Madeline Kahn, straight-faced, played the straight man. Freaking hilarious. So good in this movie. Utterly ridiculous. She's another cartoon character. She ends up falling for Sheriff Bart because he's such a likable guy, Phil. That's the reason. We're trying to keep it PG. Everybody calm down out there. I mean, I don't know. Schnitzelgruben. That's all I can say to you. But Madeline Kahn here is a regular in the Mel Brooks universe, man. And she's doing a ripoff of Marlene Dietrich in this film. I think she crushed it. I think she's hilarious. The speech impediment thing is a weird, quirky thing to add. Don't necessarily need it, but it just makes it funnier. Like, she's one of the characters in this film that you just can't get enough of her, man. Madeline Kahn is one of the best of all time. What do you think about her in this film?
Yeah, I think she's great. I think it's kind of one of those other things where in the cowboy movie and the guy rides into town and he gets the girl and all these other things. To flip that on its head the way they did and have this kind of character in this movie, I think it it makes a lot of sense, especially with them. Again, his plan getting flipped on its head, and Headley sending her in like, yeah, go and seduce him and kill him, and then he doesn't even like account for it all. Like maybe this guy is again really great, and maybe she would fall for him.
Yeah. Based on Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich's character, Frenchie in Destry Rides Again. I think that's a Jimmy Stewart film, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm mistaken. Let's see. No, yeah, that's a Jimmy Stewart film. But yeah, she's, like I said, everything that Haley Lamar does in this film absolutely backfires on him. Yeah, you're totally right about that. Yeah, she's freaking great here, man. And with the Nazis on stage, why are there Nazis in this film, Phil? I guess because they're the worst of the worst racists of all time, but like a little freaking ridiculous, but it's Mel Brooks as well. They just kind of show up out of nowhere. So that's good. Yeah, she's freaking great here. We know Mel Brooks is in this. He's William J. Lepetemain, the governor. We don't know what state that Rockridge is in. They never name the state. He's also an Indian chief. Yeah, he's, again, the great Mel Brooks, man. One of the greatest of all time. I mean, him playing an Indian chief, Native American chief, how about we say that? Freaking ridiculous, but it's in some weird way it works. Cleavon Little's telling his life story, the Waco Kid, who of course falls asleep because it's, always like to keep my audience riveted. We've got a Jewish man playing a Native American in a movie where a black man is sheriff. And it's like, he's taken all these tropes that existed in previous Westerns, like this idea that, John Wayne played Native American, Phil. Like this kind of thing had been done for years in Hollywood because of the, let's be honest, racism that was in Hollywood. And he's flat out calling it out. Again, what other director at that time would have gotten away with half of this besides Mel Brooks, man?
Yeah. And he just does the voice, right? There's the actor that actually plays the Native American, or am I wrong? Is this Mel in makeup? It looks like he just does the voice, correct?
No, it's him in makeup. It's him on the horse. Yeah.
Oh boy. That
Yeah.
can get pretty problematic.
Yeah. For sure.
But it's the 70s. There were a lot of people, putting on red faces, there were, for a lack of a better word, and doing Indians. Probably could have gone without that in this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, to not to defend the guy, but his point of doing that was calling out the fact that it had been done so many times, and it was always we had to play it like a Native American would sound. How would an Indian sound? That kind of thing. He's like, let's just poke fun at it, and I'll just speak Yiddish when I'm on the horse. Which,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is part of the intent of the gag, is that he sounds nothing like an Indian or a Native American, and so to do this, it's just to point out how ridiculous it is that this is actually done in Hollywood. Um, but it is one of those things where it's so close that's like, you couldn't just get a Native American. But again, I guess that would have killed the purpose of the joke.
well, that's true. Yeah, maybe a better bit would have been to get a Native American and have him speak Yiddish. I don't know. That would have been a kind of a twist. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, well, again, 1974 kids, as Phil said, for sure. We said that Mel stuck to his guns over this. He did have repeated conflicts over content with Warner Brothers executives. They objected to the constant use of the N-word, the scene of Lily Von Stupp seducing Bart in the dark, the flatulent campfire scene, which was the first time it had ever been portrayed in a movie with the sounds. Like, right? It's crazy. And one of the most iconic, for whatever weird reason, I guess because men are a bunch of adolescent boys at heart and cracking up like little kids every time you see it. It's an iconic scene. And then, of course, Mongo punching out a horse, among other issues. But Mel Brooks' contract gave him final content control. He declined to make any substantial changes. He did remove the final line in Bart and Lily's seduction scene. Bart was supposed to have said, "I hate to disappoint you, ma'am, but you're sucking my arm." So I imagine that wouldn't have went over too well.
No.
Oh, man. When asked about his frequent use of the N-word in the script, Brooks said he received consistent support for its use from Richard Pryor and Cleavon Little. He added that if the film were to be remade today, the controversial word would have to be omitted. I disagree. And then you have no movie. After the film's release, he said he received many letters of complaint about the frequent N references, but of course, most of them were from white people. I mean, again, I'm not advocating for anyone to say the word. I just think this notion of we can't make this, sure you could. Maybe not a great idea, but again, Tarantino didn't have a whole heck of a big problem with it. Nobody stopped him, and everybody calls him a genius. So I don't know, Phil. I feel like people are okay with what they're okay with. And it's this idea of picking and choosing what they're comfortable with or not comfortable with, which is maybe part of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. I just personally, I just find it funny that the main people that I see saying things like this movie couldn't be made, or this would be stopped today, are white people. And it's funny that people don't seem to understand the power dynamic at play in Hollywood. Um, because if somebody wants to make a movie, it's going to get made. Um, People can complain and crow about it all they want, but if the right creator with the right amount of creative control and power wants to make something, it will get made.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, not the easiest thing in the world to get a movie made to begin with, but once a studio says yes, you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, you move forward for sure. We talked about the music here, even from the beginning of the movie. Frankie Lane, who's a singer composer, done a lot of stuff for Hollywood and TV. You're going to love this. They didn't tell him this was a comedy.
That's great.
Which is why the opening song is so serious. They were afraid to tell him it was a comedy because they didn't want him to have too much fun with it. They wanted to play it straight laced. And when he finds out later it's a comedy, he thought it was great. He said, I love the film. I'm glad you didn't tell me. So very cool. Very cool. Once that song gets stuck in your head, it's there forever.
Yeah, I think it fits the tone of the movie. I think if you told him it was a comedy, he would have tried to make it sound too cartoonish. Possibly. So I think that's probably the right move to just, let him just make the movie as if it was a serious Western.
Yeah, for sure. Which he did quite a few Westerns, I'm sure. One of Taggart's henchmen is Burton Gilliam. You'll know his face if you don't know his name. Burton Gilliam is still with us, Phil. He is 85. Been around for a while. Yeah, he was in Gator. He was in Honeymoon in Vegas, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. He was in the A-Team, the Charlie's Angels film, Dukes of Hazzard, and the Fall Guy. He was in Fall Guy. There you go. So yeah, been around for a long time. Perfect guy to put at the lead of these idiot cowboys, where he's trying to tell Bart about, the song they should be singing. And so him and all the cowboys break out singing Camptown Ladies, and all the black guys working on the railroad are just laughing at him because they're such freaking morons. Then Taggart has to ride up and go, what a world, wide world of sports is going on down here. Oh my God, it's so good. Those guys are such idiots, man. I don't know. It just makes the film work. It just works. I don't know. It just works. It doesn't hurt a thing that it's funny, that everybody in this film is really good at what they do, man, for sure.
Yeah, just that part of them asking them to sing something, and then they're confused afterwards, and they're looking for like kind of a Negro spiritual, and they don't get it, and they're like, and then they like start trying to sing one, and then they're confused as well, and then they try to, like you said, they go into Camptown races. It's like, what?
Yeah. And Cleavon Little, who was a Broadway star, starts singing, and he can really sing. And it's like a Broadway tune. I'm like, wait, hold it. What is, I can't curse here, but what the heck's that crap? Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. He was so bothered by having to say the N-word so many times to Cleavon Little that he stopped, apparently, because he and Cleavon were friends. And after several takes, Cleavon Little had to take him off the set to talk to him, and told him it was okay because these weren't his words. These were the words of the character he was playing. And then Cleavon Little jokingly said, if I thought you would say those words to me in any other situation, we'd go to Fist City. But all this is fun. Don't worry about it. So Fist City. I don't know what to make of that, but hey, I don't know. Them's fighting words, I suppose. But yeah. I mean, it's good to know that the actors involved are like, whoa, you want me to say what? I don't want to do that. So like, not everyone in Hollywood's the jaded, douchebag that we all believe them to be, perhaps.
Yeah. I think we'd all have more questions if people just ran on set with the script and were just comfortably saying it like that. That would have raised some red flags for a lot of people. Like,
yeah, what kind of movie are you making here? Yeah. This movie almost didn't get released, kids. The screenings were not good. So when it was first screened for Warner Brothers executives, almost none of them laughed, and the movie looked to be a disaster that the studio would not release. However, Mel Brooks quickly set up a subsequent screening for the studio's employees. When these regular folks laughed uproariously throughout the whole movie, Warner Brothers finally agreed to take a chance in releasing it. Phil, can you imagine the stuffed shirts, the rich guys running the studio? They didn't get it. Shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Not shocked at any way that they took one look at this movie and were like, well, what is it supposed to mean? Like, I immediately think of with the character in Big, and he's just like, I don't get it.
Oh my God. It's crazy how again this movie almost didn't happen. Freaking nuts. I mean, beginning at the very beginning with the Richard Pryor stuff, all that happened on down, to all the language and the the rampant racism that's all the way through this film. Warner Brothers folks getting nervous about it, not wanting to, and kept wanting Mel to change everything. He refused to change anything. Good for him. Stuck to his guns. He's a creator, Phil. Like telling an artist to change because of, I think that's like censoring an album to me. You're You're going to the person this is his creation. This is what he's put his blood, sweat, and tears into. And you're telling him to change it. I got a real problem with that, man. Again, like if you don't like it, I mean, I guess the studio could have kicked it to the curb. They don't have to make the film. But isn't that a problem also when we start telling creators they can and can't do something?
Yeah, I think you have to give the creators the ability to make the movie that they want to make. I of course understand not letting creators go completely out of control, and you have to edit some guys. But I also understand you have to be able to give creators to tell their story the way they want to tell it.
Yeah, for sure. Let them work. Just let them work. We've also got Alex Karras, ex-NFL football player. You may know him as the dad of Webster on the popular 80s
Mr.
show. He is Mongo. That's right, yeah. Mongo like candy. Oh my God, I love that guy. And you mentioned the Bugs Bunny thing. They had the Looney Tunes when Bart goes into the saloon. Candygram for Mongo. Oh my God, dude. Did you notice when they hand the pen, he just scribbles a bunch of nothing?
Yes.
It's like, sign here, please. But then, of course, he likes him because he's the only man that's ever stood up to him. So they end up being friends in the end, which is cool.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
We got to mention all the Johnsons in town. And that's not a joke. You got Olson Johnson, Reverend Johnson, Howard Johnson, Van Johnson, Gabby Johnson, Harriet Johnson, Sam Johnson. And I think that's it. A bunch of Johnsons in town. Absolutely ridiculous. The townspeople. Let's take a minute, Phil, to talk about the townsfolk of Rockridge. Just podunk, absolute, again, morons. Like, and one of these guys was Higgins, of course, on the old Magnum PI TV show. But a lot of these faces, kids, you'll recognize if you know anything about 70s, 60s TV and movies and beyond. You'll know a lot of these faces if you don't know the names for sure. What do you think about the town of Rockridge, man? Like straight-faced, utterly ridiculous, man. It just sets the scene for the movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it fits. I think it fits the movie of the initial stuff of setting up, like establishing the town, establishing the crime going on in the town. It's great to set the scene, but it's also really funny. Every time I see the scene of them having an old woman hemmed up and they're like punching her in the stomach, it's hilarious every time.
Have you ever seen such cruelty? And the school marm, Harriet Johnson, the school marm, when she gets up there, she's prepared a speech. She's like, "We the people." And you can hear people go louder. And she's like, "I'm sorry. I'm not used to public speaking." And then she booms as loud as she can. And like everybody like falls down on stage and there's a big commotion in the hall. It's so good, man. And then Gabby, the guy that was Gabby, like he was like the mascot of the town, so to speak. And that was supposed to be a callback to the old, was it Gabby Hayes, I guess, of the old Westerns, which is really good. I mean, it's again, dude, it feels like a Western to a large degree, but at the same time, once you get into it, you understand that it is a comedy and it is satire and it's just supposed to be ridiculous. I mean, we have to say the film is beautifully shot, dude. I mean, it looks like an old Western film until you get the bleed over of, this idea, Phil, that the camera pans back and it's actually a studio backlot. And then it's real time. There's a car and there's other stuff happening. And then it's kind of like a Monty Python where they're mixing the world they're creating and everything. How far off the rails does this movie get as a comedy, dude? Does it just get too silly in the end or what?
Yeah, once they start actually going out into the studio, it's like, what? Where are we going with this?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of grew up watching this film. This film, because God, man, this. Like they played it on cable all the time. Basically, it was one of those Saturday movies that played basically every weekend for years. Heavily edited, of course. Heavily edited.
Of course.
Even the campfire scene, they took the sound out of it. So when you watch it, if you didn't know what you were watching, all these cowboys they're standing up, lifting the legs, and you hear nothing. You're like, what am I looking at right now? What's going on here? Even that, they took the sound out. Terrible. Yeah. Let's see. Robin Hilton as Miss Stein, Governor Lepetamane's secretary. Yeah. She's not bad to look at, but she's just there for comedic effect. Let's see. Charles McGregor as Charlie, Bart's best friend. This guy did some stuff. He was Fat Freddy in Superfly, and he was in several black exploitation films in the 70s. He went on to have a career and did a lot of other stuff besides this. Dom DeLuise as Buddy Bizarre. Dom DeLuise fell out of nowhere. He had like maybe 2 lines or something, 3 lines. That's all he had, but it was great. Did you ever get into like the Cannonball Run films, by the way?
I did not.
Oh, man. Classic Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. That's kind of where I got to know the guy. And he was like a personality, I think, more than anything else at the time. It's hard to keep a straight face around him on set because he was just so funny, but he's awesome here. This film very much product of his time, right? I mean, it very much feels like a 70s film, doesn't it?
It does. Even when you get into stuff on set and like that depiction of Hollywood, the cars and everything, it feels very 70s.
Yeah, for sure. Count Basie, as we said, has a cameo here, which is cool. Yeah, I think that's most of the cast, man. A lot of good stuff here, man. I just love this film. I think as a standalone comedy, if you take out any possibility of controversy or anything people get bent out of shape over, and then just come to understand it's not advocating for anything. It's not advocating racism. It's actually completely anti-racism. I mean, it is just meant to be a comedy. And then people take other things out as they do other, whether it's a song or a TV show or a book, or like we said before, just crazy, man. Do you revisit this at any point? I mean, I don't know that I've heard anything or read anything about them ever wanting to do something about it, but what do you think about that? I mean, is there a world in which this could actually work or no?
I don't know if you revisit it. I don't know that you need to. I think that it's very much it definitely relic from its time period. I don't know that you need to remake it. That gets into the conversation we had about, can you make this movie today? It's not so much that I don't think that you can make this movie today, but it's the question of why would you?
Yeah.
Because the movie's already been made. So why would you need to go back and rehash it?
Did you notice that the medieval hangman, Robert Ridgely, is the same hangman from Robin Hood Men in Tights?
I didn't, but I guess if I paid attention, like, yeah. Because, I mean, there are a lot of similarities to this movie, to Men in Tights, of course.
What'd you think about Men in Tights?
Great movie. Very funny movie.
Yeah.
It's same kind of humor, same kind of Bugs Bunny influence as well.
Yeah, we've done Spaceballs here on the 6M. I think that's the only Mel Brooks film we've done here, not counting this one. There you go. Here's something fun. During a speech honoring Brooks as a Kennedy Center honoree, former President Barack Obama mentioned going to see this film at the age of 12. When Brooks asked how he got in with the ratings restriction, Obama replied, "I think I had a fake ID that I got with my fake birth certificate," before adding, "The statute of limitations has passed."
What a great joke.
Wonderful. I don't know how anyone else feels about this film. If you grew up with it, if you didn't, if you'd never heard of it, depending on how old you are, if you think it's just full of rude and crude humor and it should never be seen by anyone again, I just submit these are jokes. Everybody needs to calm down. I mean, the most offensive stand-up comic in the year 2024 could get on stage and say the most racist, and I'm not saying that the guy saying the jokes maybe isn't a bad guy. I don't know, but he's getting paid to stay on a stage and tell jokes. And I get it. Maybe you're offended. Maybe it hurts you. Maybe there was a joke about his dead grandma and your grandma died yesterday. I get it. I'm not making light of that either. I'm just saying People connect to entertainment in many different ways. But again, Phil, like, I just don't understand why it's so hard for people. Just don't watch. Don't go to see it. I've seen people picketing a film, like holding up signs, like, and then they get interviewed. Well, have you seen the film? No. Then why are you? What are you doing out here? What? Don't you have a life? Why are you haven't even seen the film? Like they did with Dogma, with Kevin Smith film. Like just one random example. I don't know, man. And I think you're right. The whole social media age has really given people what they perceive to be permission to just comment on everything. When the truth is, none of it really matters, Phil. It's entertainment. Are we ever going to be able to separate those two, or is it just too hard now?
It's gotten very hard now because so many fans know how the sausage is made, and
Mm,
so they believe they're behind the curtain. And when they see all of this information, it's like, oh, I can affect this by uh, giving my commentary online or giving my pushback online. It's like, I mean, just think about something like the Sonic the Hedgehog movie and the original
mm.
design that came out and how awful it looked and how the fan outrage to it got them to change it to a better design. And I think that it needed to change because it was an awful design, and what we eventually ended up with was better. But I have seen people that took the wrong um, lesson from that, and they're like, "See, if you complain long enough online, they'll change something for you."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, sometimes these things can work for the better, but that's a very slippery slope when you put power like that in the hands of people that don't know what to do with it.
Because everyone has their own agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and everything is not done in good faith. Everything is not like, all right, well, this design is legitimately bad. You guys should change it.
Yeah. The fact that people get that upset, I just don't understand it. Don't understand it. And I'm not a comedian. I've never tried it, as a profession. But like, have we made comedians? I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends on which comic you're asking, because some comics have different opinions. Seinfeld just recently said what he said, and then other comics have come out and said, no, that's not true or whatever. Like it's going to be a bad day if we make comedians scared or they feel like they can't write certain jokes. Like at the end of the day, they're ultimately the ones that had to live with whatever material they're putting out into the world. They don't really owe anybody anything. I just don't get this idea, Phil, personally, that this comic I've paid to see owes me something or that he has to be careful because it's important. They're jokes, Phil. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen stand-up comics in your time. Have you ever been so insulted by somebody that you come away thinking, well, that's a waste of money?
No, there's been things I've watched where I'm just like, this isn't for me. I'm not enjoying this. Or, oh, I don't like this guy. And I've just stopped watching. Like prime example, I think Bill Maher sucks.
Oh,
Like
same.
I think at one point he was very funny, but his show has very much become not for me. And
Yeah.
so because of that, I just don't watch it. We're just in this weird time period where you also get comedians that are like, "Oh, I can't say what I want to say," and I can't, I can't just make jokes without offending people. And I thought Cat Williams gave the best answer in regards to that. I think if your style of comedy relies totally on offending people, marginalize people that cannot stand up for themselves in certain rooms, um, then that's on you. If you can't
Mm.
find a way to be funny without doing that, then you're not funny.
Yeah, because you've painted yourself into a corner with one type of comedy, and that's all you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
One trick pony, right? Freaking nuts, man. Yeah. I get that. I totally see that. And look, at the end of the day, kids, no matter how you feel about this movie or anything else Mel Brooks has ever done, you should know this. He wrote this movie out of anger at white corruption, racism, and Bible thumping bigotry. So there you go. Not my words. All right. But I think it's, in 2024, Phil, I think everything I just mentioned, that's pretty prevalent today, I would think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the important thing here is as many things as Mel Brooks has done throughout his career, he has done so many things that are funny that didn't rely on having to shock you or use slurs or be offensive.
Mm.
He can just make a funny movie when you think of just Gene Wilder and how funny he is without having to be offensive or someone like Larry David and how funny he can be without having to do any of those things.
Good call. Yeah.
That's kind of where I stand with people that feel like, oh well, comedy is ruined now because everybody's too sensitive. No, I just think that, you know, real good comedians can adapt.
Yeah. Change with the times. Yeah. Just like your favorite band. They may tweak their sound to keep up, but they're still the same band, but they'll explore different creative avenues and maybe try a new sound, see what they can do. It's kind of the same thing, right? You have to be current. If you're not current, you're going to be left behind, right?
Yeah.
Seems simple enough to understand. Let's talk about a few of the jokes here, and I'm not talking about the racist based stuff that's in here, or where we're poking fun at that, even though it's fun to poke fun at it. When he first comes to town, and they're all pulling their guns on him, so he takes his gun out of the holster and puts it on himself. And these people are so dumb they freaking fall for it, man. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts of this.
It's so great that it's they're totally buying into this thing the entire way.
Yeah.
And it's just what makes the concept of racism so stupid is that I hate you because of this antiquated belief of how black people came into this country. But you're also dumb enough to believe what this guy is doing in this moment.
Hold it, man. He's not bluffing. That's a great line. Just out of the blue because he falls for it. Oh, it's so good. The other guy's like, he's just crazy enough to do it. Listen to him. Oh, and he gets back in the office, and he's like, oh, baby, you are so talented and they are so dumb. Breaking the fourth wall, talking to the camera. It's nice.
Very, very ain't I a stinker line.
Very good. Yeah. The physical comedy here is awesome. Punching the horse. No horses were harmed making this film, kids. Everybody calm down.
Peter's definitely not letting that happen today.
No.
Punching a horse on the movie.
That's right. The PETA folks don't care much about the N-word being said. They're okay with that. But can't be punching a horse. Oh my God, it's so good. Well, kids, that there's a lot here. Again, the jokes are freaking amazing. If you grew up with this film, you probably love it. I think it's one of the most classic comedies of all time. I will say the comedy holds up. Yes, it's very dated, but so are most Westerns that I've ever seen are very dated to their time period. So in that way, it is very dated. The fact that we can laugh at idiot racists will never get old to me. Because I think for as many dangerous racists are out there actually, being violent towards people and causing harm, there's probably just as many, if not more, who just talk a good game and they're ignorant as hell, let's put it that way. But, they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to get in trouble. They're just going to run their mouths. And, free country, kids, is the price you pay. Doesn't make it right, of course, but that's part of the deal of living here for sure. Where do you rank this, Phil? Personally, what do you think this is in like the pantheon of great comedy films?
It's not high on my personal list, but I do think that it's a very impactful and influential film. And I just say it's not high on my personal list because it's not high on my list of like personal viewing habits. But in terms of like comedy and what this did for certain people's careers, I think that it's high up there.
Yeah, influential is a great way to put it. Yeah. Again, I think we're in trouble if we just can't laugh at a comedy. I don't know. There's plenty of shock comics out there through the years, and they're just saying things to get a rise out of people. I get it. Some of those guys you don't want to be around. They're not great people, maybe behind the scenes. But again, I don't know. Maybe I'm gullible, Phil. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe to me, entertainment's so subjective. And if you don't like something, no one's forcing you to watch it. I don't know. I don't think we fixed any of the world's problems doing this episode, but we got a chance to talk about one of my personal favorite comedies of all time. So we're gonna have to cover some more Richard Pryor here for sure. I think he and Gene Wilder together definitely gonna have to do Stir Crazy one of these days, man, for sure. What was your favorite movie they did together, by the way?
Probably See No Evil, Hear No Evil. That's definitely the one I've seen the most.
Yeah. You know, maybe the weakest of the three they did in terms of overall jokes and whatnot, but like still really, really good. Well, Phil, let's try to put a button on this. Give me your last word on Blazing Saddles.
I would say a impactful film, very funny, very relevant for its time period, very risky movie to make.
Mm.
But I think the payoff for it was worth it. I think for what it managed to do with a pretty short run time. It's not a very long movie. Doesn't
Mm.
overstay its welcome. Um, and I think that it's one of Mel's most beloved movies for sure. It's definitely one of those movies that's become a cult classic.
You know, if you're gonna make a movie make fun of some people, kids, you may as well make fun of racism, because ignorance never has a place in civilized culture. And you know, again, we're not curing cancer here, but anytime we can openly make statements about doing something that's right, doing it for the right reasons, and you know, at the end of the day, worry about yourself, man. Quit worrying about everybody else. My God. And quit trying to hurt people and quit trying to put people down to build yourself up. I just don't get it. Like none of that makes any sense to me. But hey, you know, we'll try to move one rock at a time. Can't move the boulder up the hill, but we'll maybe move one rock at a time with a silly little podcast. So there you go, kids. I'm with Phil. Classic comedy. Yes, of its time for sure. But for me personally, I still enjoy this film. And there you go, kids. Blazing Saddles. Stay tuned for a lot more. We appreciate you very much. And be on the lookout for some more Gene Wilder, Mel Brooks, and Richard Pryor stuff coming down the pipe very soon. But for now, that is Blazing Saddles.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.